Hello, everyone. My name is Martha. I'm a relationship counselor and clinical sexologist. And this is my officially first work video for 2020. Okay, so this question actually came on YouTube about 2 hours ago. And I decided that since I'm in the mood and I have time to make videos, that I would answer this question. So let me read the question. Do you think that okay, so I'm not correcting the English. Do you think that the reason someone doesn't find, do you think that's the reason someone doesn't find much pleasure in sex? I think the question is, what do you think is the reason someone doesn't find much pleasure in sex? I try to repress my sexual feelings as much as possible because to me it's a very uncomfortable subject. I know I shouldn't be. I know it shouldn't be, and I don't want to feel that way about it. I feel so ashamed of the idea of me being sexual, like a Madonna complex towards myself. I've tried to have it, and all I can think of is how disgusting I am. Any thoughts? So this is the question, and so this is my answer. Um, what's happening is that if you are uncomfortable with something, you are not going to feel good doing it. You're not going to feel good masturbating or self-pleasuring. And let me explain a little bit about Madonna complex. So it essentially is like having a holier than thou kind of attitude towards yourself, that you feel that you need to keep yourself pure, and engaging in sexuality is dirty and disgusting, and that's why you feel disgusting and ashamed. So what's happening is that our sexuality is like this reservoir, this wealth of sensation that resides inside us, and it wants to come out. And it is actually that force inside us that makes us want to express, that makes us want to do and achieve. And we feel good when we express ourselves, whether it's through art or singing or dancing or writing or journaling or coming out with inventions. There is something inside us that wants to come forward. And this is the life force energy that is inside us. And when we feel bad about this expression that actually happens to involve our sexuality and our genitals, when we start to feel bad about it, whether this negative thinking comes from society, from religion, from programming, from culture, from your parents, from school, from your government, from your neighbors, your friends, your siblings, where does all this negative message come from? They do have an impact on us. So by you thinking that you need to keep yourself really pure is to deny that there is something already inside that wants to come forth. And if you feel bad about your sexuality and the expression of your sexuality, and you feel disgusting and ashamed, you are not going to be able to feel, because instead of feeling, you are actually going into thinking. You are actually thinking instead of actually just doing what you want to do and allowing what wants to come out to come out. So you are actually having this fighting within yourself, and that is the reason why you don't feel that you have much pleasure in sex. So because you don't feel good about it, it's very natural that you want to repress those feelings because it's uncomfortable. So what if you learned more about sex and sexuality and the origin of this shame and religious repression on sexuality, and actually started to heal yourself what you didn't know? Maybe it's time to know, maybe it's time to learn more about it and not to be so hard on yourself. So a lot of my clients then go into, yeah, but I'm masturbating 7 times a day, and is that bad? So what a lot of people don't realize is that there's a time and place for everything. You might be super horny and you want to masturbate 7 times a day, but do you consistently want to masturbate 7 times a day, like on and on and on, like for years and years? Or is this just a time, a window this time of your life. Maybe you're going through puberty. That's why you feel like masturbating 7 times a day, because you feel really, really horny and your sexual hormones are just raging in your body. And so it's just a phase in your life. So people don't realize that you may have a high sex drive or higher sex drive from the person next door or your friend next to you. But that's because we are all different. You are born with a different constitution, and you may have a higher sex drive than your person, but don't make their sex drive something bad. Don't make your sex drive something bad as well. And your sex drive can change and will change and has changed. And there are people with high sex drive, and perhaps like after pregnancy, after baby, their sex drive changes, and then they wish that they were not so hard on themselves when they did have a higher sex drive. Or people who had a high sex drive when they were in college, and once they start working and they are focused on building career and earning money, that their sex drive changes. And so then the kind of angst that we cause ourselves is a lot of times just suffering. We are just having all these judgment because of the lack of knowledge. I would say sexual ignorance. And so we are actually all suffering because we don't understand what sex is, that actually sex is a natural part of who we are and where we come from, and we came from sex. And actually, you can even argue that people who don't have a healthy sex attitude and don't have healthy sexual expression actually have more difficulties in their life. People who are healthy, who love themselves, who embrace their sexuality, actually come across as what I call yummy, juicy, and sexy. These people are just full of vitality and vibrance, and they are just happy and glowing, and they actually attract things into their life. So people who are happy with themselves are more likely to be successful in other areas of their life. So the very fact that you are ashamed and feeling disgusted about your expression and you try to press it down, guess what? It's not. It's just like, I don't know whether you have ever played with water. I mean, I used to, because I used to be a lousy swimmer. So I had a fear of drowning. So my dad, bless him, I love my dad. My dad would bring me and my sister to swim classes every Sunday. And I did want to overcome my fear of drowning, but I was afraid. So I was just like, anyway, long story. Another day, my fear of drowning, how I overcome my fear of drowning story. But the thing is, I used to play with water a lot during my swim classes, and I would press down water. So I'll play with water and I'll press the water down. And guess what? The water would just come up through the gaps of my fingers or just around my hand, and the water would just keep wanting to come up. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. You're trying to repress something that is inside you, that is beautiful, wonderful, and natural, then actually without the programming and negative messaging that we receive in our around us, that actually wants to come up. And that is the reason why, despite you repressing it, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? Why don't you learn about it and actually start to see this as something that is natural, and that the only suffering that is happening is actually the way you think about it, and the way you think about it came from where? So the healing can happen with more education and knowledge, and embracing your sexuality is going to help you to have less suffering and strife and tension inside you. And in order to heal that, okay, more knowledge, more education, more understanding that is a natural part of who you are, and even if you suppress it, it's going to come up. So what you want to do is not just control it. What you want to do is maybe you learn how to express it in ways that are beneficial to you, in ways that feels good to you, in ways that feels like it's it's not like a waste. So you could express your sexuality in ways that, like for instance with a partner, in ways like with your taking it like it's beautiful. I'm gonna say it's like it's like a vision quest. It's like going inside yourself. It's like going inside yourself, and instead of just ejaculating outside, maybe sending that energy back to yourself through your intention. So you can say, okay, I'm going to ejaculate now. Okay, I'm talking about ejaculation. I'm making reference to people with penis because this person is someone with a penis. The person will ask this question. That's why I'm framing it this way. So don't think that I'm only talking about people with penises. Obviously, this also applies to people with vaginas. You know, nowadays people are so contentious. You say something and then they're like, wait, you never talk about women. Okay, so regardless of whatever it is, when you send out your sexual energy, you masturbate, you ejaculate, you have an orgasm, you can actually set an intention and then send the energy back to yourself. All you need to do is just say, okay, I'm going to masturbate, I'm going to ejaculate, I'm going to send the energy back to yourself. That's all. It's just like how maybe before I go to sleep, I might put an alarm on my phone and say, okay, I'm going to put an alarm for 7 a.m. However, body, you need to take responsibility as well and wake up at 7. So not only do I tell the phone to act as a reminder, but I actually also remind, like talk to myself. So that's kind of how you can set that intention so that your self-pleasuring practice is something that actually makes you feel good. Like I said I'm going to do it and then I do it. I said I wanted to masturbate for 5 minutes. Hey, I did it. My body is good. My body listens to me. My body is strongly connected to my mind, to my heart, and I am in love with me more and more each day because my body listens to me. And I love my sexuality because it is part of who I am, where I came from, and it's a natural life force energy that resides inside me. So when you start actually talking positively about your sexuality, you are not going to feel so embarrassed. Maybe you will still for a while. Me too. But over time, it actually does get easier. And then you start to, you know, your mind starts to have more positive thoughts, and then you're more likely to then feel. So there's the thinking and then there's the feeling, there's the thinking and then there's the doing. So the doing, you also need to feel. That's where the pleasure is. If you also want to train yourself to have more pleasure in your life, another thing that you can do is to practice having pleasure in other areas of your life so that you don't feel that pleasure, for instance, is a waste of time, or pleasure is taking up too much time, or you're not feeling enough, not feeling enough, quickly enough. So this is a practice. Learning how to have pleasure is a practice. Learning how to have pleasure in sex is an extension of pleasure. And so your relationship with pleasure is also something that you may want to look into. So this is my long-winded answer to a long, convoluted question, phrased in a way that sounds complicated, but really is not. It's all linked together. You feel uncomfortable because you feel ashamed. You feel ashamed about sex, and therefore you start to think you're disgusting. And when you think that you are disgusting, and then that's the reason why you are not able to feel pleasure, because instead of being in your head, you are instead of being in your body, you are in your head. And when you're in your head, it's very difficult to feel pleasure. Another way that you can feel more pleasure is to learn to have more pleasure in your life, such as the pleasure of the air conditioning that I'm experiencing in this room, or the pleasure of the food that you eat, the pleasure of your next breath going into your body. So pleasure is around us and available, easily accessible to all of us. Is actually where your consciousness is. So with that, I hope I answered your question. Thanks for watching this video. You can check out my work at eroscoaching.com.